For my Action Research project, I decided to focus on accurate ways to collect assessment data and how to provide effective feedback. The most important value that teacher holds is that of knowledge and their commitment to instilling this knowledge within their students. While many students find learning to be boring and can often struggle with education, teachers strive every day to encourage their students to love learning and truly engage themselves in the pursuit of knowledge. Not only do teachers encourage others to pursue knowledge, but they continue to further their knowledge as well. In this ongoing pursuit, teachers continue to educate themselves on classroom practices, strategies, and various educational topics. Teachers aren't just there to teach, but they are in a continuous process of learning as well. Should they stop learning themselves, their teaching will surely falter. The world advances with technology, and knowledge steadily changes, and it is the responsibility of a teacher to stay updated in order to prepare their students for all of the upcoming changes within the society. Moreover, teachers should be accountable in learning from their students as well. It is important to understand the importance of being able to determine an appropriate grade that encapsulates the student's abilities and knowledge accurately. In order to give the students a grade that reflects their true understanding and abilities, one must be sure to accurately assess them on the tasks and test their knowledge to be sure that they understand concepts and new learning. A teacher must be sure to collect the data throughout various stages of students' learning. Therefore, one must assess for, as, and of learning. In order to fairly assess a student, the first steps are to be sure that you are collecting enough information as well as providing effective feedback throughout the student's learning in order to understand where a student is and where they need to go. It can be challenging to make sure that one is collecting enough data to grade a student. Therefore, it is crucial to make sure you understand how to properly collect and assess a student by creating notes throughout their education. My research question was, how can I accurately conduct assessments of students based on their abilities by providing constant feedback as well as collecting data to form a detailed compilation of accurate notes that will help to create a final grade. Some key terms and definitions to keep in mind are assessment, which is the evaluation or estimation of the nature, quality, or ability of someone or something, which would be followed by feedback, which is information about reactions to a product, a person's performance of a task, which is used as a basis for improvement. In order to collect assessment and feedback, one must be sure to be accurate, which means they need to be correct in all details and exact. Lastly, student engagement is the amount of attention, interest, and curiosity that a student shows in learning, sharing ideas, and knowledge through active participation. Throughout my literature reviews, articles had a common theme regarding assessment in the nature that it allows students to remain accountable for their progress. Student learning can be greatly affected through the use of assessment and in-turn feedback. Assessing students throughout a unit paces their learning as well as have expectations along the way followed by specific feedback. This allows a student to create motivation to complete their tasks and is in a sense rewarded with feedback that outlines their strengths as well as areas of improvement. Assessment is a great tool to help improve student engagement, for each individual is able to develop their skills individually based on the feedback that fit their needs and abilities. By allowing each student to work at their own pace and be informed where they are and what they need to work towards next, often helps them from becoming discouraged if they aren't on pace with their classmates. Another common theme in the research literature was the accuracy of documented assessments. The importance of assessment is crucial to outlining a student's abilities. Therefore, creating and compiling a concrete list of accurate assessment is essential and necessary for a teacher. Through this research, I've been able to identify how it impacts student learning and creates a consistent pace in education. While many of the articles had commonalities, I found that Ruth's article went further into describing the necessary steps in order to compile useful and resourceful assessment data. There are 3 steps that are necessary. These include identifying clear learning outcomes, designing appropriate assessment tasks that will directly assess whether each of these learning outcomes have been met, and lastly, designing an appropriate learning opportunity for the students to get them to a point where they can successfully undertake the assessment tasks. By setting the students up through these steps, you will have a consistent set of rules to follow in order to gather valid information as it follows the same guidelines and steps each time. A recurring notion that was prevalent through the articles was the importance of using assessment throughout a unit and not only on a final test or assignments. Having the student remain accountable for their work will allow them to work harder as they are working for a purpose. The perception, impact, and credibility of feedback allows students to understand what they are successful at and how they can improve in the future. In order for a teacher to provide feedback, they need to have specific details to allow a student to understand exactly what is necessary. In order to do this, a teacher must have detailed assessment notes and data. Therefore, it is important to create a substantial collection of data and information that will lead to a clear understanding of what the student can do and where they need to go next. This allowed me to better understand the necessity for various forms of assessment, as well as the need to create specific and personalized feedback for each student using the data collected. Feedback can be presented in a variety of forms other than just comments and oral suggestions. They can be presented in the form of questions and should be specific for each student's work. They should be related to the learning goals and success criteria in order to help the students understand where they may have gone wrong and what they have missed. Suggested ways to provide feedback as outlined through the literature were to be specific with the information and to end on a positive note. All students should hear areas in which they need to work on as well as their strengths. This will allow them to build on those strengths and strive towards reaching their next goal. Another way to provide effective feedback is through automatic and immediate feedback. This can be done through applications like Prodigy and Bitsboard. This will allow the students to learn individually and on their own without the teacher's support. Through my research, I was able to develop an action research plan as to how I would track and create accurate assessment data and turn it into effective feedback for the students. Focusing on grade 6 students, they are able to self-reflect in a deeper and more meaningful way. That is why I have chosen to use self-assessment and checklists to collect data for their assessment. Students are more likely to be invested in their work if they can understand the concepts that they are being taught. By allowing students to reflect on their learning, they are able to explain what they know and where they may be struggling. Students will fill out a survey on a monthly basis regarding a specific subject. They can reflect on how they feel they understand the concepts as well as how they think they are progressing. The students would be able to use a number scale to answer 8 questions outlining their opinions and observations of their work and abilities. They'll also have space to write any additional questions or comments if necessary. This will allow the students to have check-in self-assessments to express themselves privately. These self-assessments are confidential and therefore allow the teacher to understand if some of the students are struggling with a concept but are simply afraid to ask for further clarification. Secondly, the teacher will use checklists to keep track of what concepts the students understand and have been successful at. This can help a teacher to see at a quick glance what concepts need to be further reviewed in order to help the class at large or individual students. It can give an overview of what the class knows and areas to work on together. For the teacher journals, the teacher will be able to answer a set of questions at the end of each week regarding the student's progress in that unit. They are able to document their own opinions and reflect on the strengths and areas of need for their students. This will be able to provide documented reflections for the teachers and will inform them and will be able to inform their students through conferences. Anecdotal notes are records that are created based on students' abilities and the progression throughout a unit. They can be added on throughout the units as the teacher is able to note a student's abilities, strengths, as well as areas of need. The information will be compiled for the teachers to use and to give to their students through oral interviews or conferences. In order to be sure that the results of my action research would be reliable and valid, I was sure to make a clear triangulation of data in my action research plan. In order to be sure that my information was credible, I chose multiple data sources of different types in order to ensure that the data was not biased by one person's observations and opinions. Through the use of self-assessment, checklists, anecdotal notes, and teacher journals, I've been able to collect data from both students and the teacher. I've also used the collection of both qualitative and quantitative data in order to have a clear understanding on a student's abilities and areas of need. Due to the collection of data through various people and different types of data, I have been able to demonstrate the validity of this data. This is due to the fact that multiple measures will lead to the same results, and it increases the validity of the data that is collected. By allowing multiple sources in my data collection, as well as the influence of different perspectives, I will be able to ensure that the triangulation of data is consistent and therefore valid. Reliability focuses on providing consistent results throughout a variety of various times and situations. This is present through using the same survey questions throughout the same unit to ensure understanding of the questions and to see how the students have improved. This is demonstrated through both student self-assessment and teacher journals. Also, in terms of documenting anecdotal notes, a teacher needs to be sure to document consistently for each student. This will ensure that the students are being held to their own expectations based on their ability and are being assessed equally. The participants of my action research are a set of grade 6 students. The students will use self-assessment, which will be completed monthly by each student in the class. Competence with the teacher will be based on the anecdotal notes and the progression when necessary. The teacher will create checklists and anecdotal notes that will be completed by them based on the progression of their students. They will be able to complete their teacher journals and analyze student self-assessments monthly. The setting of this action research project will be in the classroom. That is going to be an inclusive learning environment that is created by both the students and the teachers. When collecting, documenting, and analyzing my data, I must be sure that I am taking into consideration the ethical standards. This would include the confidentiality and privacy of each student. All students, as well as their parents, should be informed on what the research project is, why the data is being collected, what types of information is being collected, how the information will be used, and most importantly, how the identity of each student will be protected and kept confidential. Students will be sent home with a note outlining all of the necessary information, allowing both the parents and the students to discuss and decide if they would like to participate. They will need to sign a consent form and will be allowed to withdraw at any time without penalty. Any identifiers of the student, including the name and the class teacher, will be removed from the information in order to keep the students in the classroom protected. Pseudonyms will be used when referring to participants, and the information will be stored in a locked cabinet that is only accessible by the teacher conducting the research. All of the information will be destroyed 6 months after the research has been completed and finalized. The timeline for this action research project will be as follows. Anecdotal notes will be created monthly. Weekly, a teacher will rotate between 4 groups of students throughout the entire school year. This means that they will focus on a smaller amount of students each week in order to allow full focus on a smaller sample of students. The student self-assessments will be conducted monthly by all of the students in the classroom. For the checklists, they will be completed weekly. When students grasp concepts or continue to struggle, this will allow the teacher to understand where they may need to go and review concepts as a class or in small groups depending on the needs of the students. The teacher's journals will be created weekly. Every other week, at the end of the week, the teacher will answer a series of questions that will be the same every week. This will allow the teacher to reflect on half of the students one week and half of the students the next week. Anecdotal notes, student self-assessment, and teacher journals will be all documented through spreadsheets. They will be able to compile the information into frequency charts if needed, and then teacher journals will be able to use a rating of 1 to 4 in order to allow easy access into transferring the information from the journals into report cards. Teachers are lifelong learners. They have the opportunity to improve their understanding of assessment and the importance of feedback.